Washington Journal continues.
Stuart Anderson of the National Foundation for American Policy joins us to talk about the H1B visa policy, how that might be changing under the Obama administration. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
First, tell us, what is an H1B visa?
Sure. An H-1B visa is a temporary visa, good for generally 6 years. When companies use this visa to employ someone, they have to pay them comparable to an American. They also have to pay generally about $5,000 to $6,000 in various legal and government fees, including about $1,500 that goes towards scholarships and job training for Americans. Those have funded about 45,000 scholarships for U.S. students in math and science over the past about 8 or 9 years. One of the reasons they're really important and they get in the news is that they tend to be the only way, the only practical way for an employer to hire either an outstanding international student or a foreign national coming from abroad. And one reason for that is the green card waits, which is what allows someone to stay permanently in the United States, are about 6 to 10 years. And they're actually on the 10-year side for, say, for people from India and China, because they're what are called country limits. And I think one of the reforms that people would like to make in Congress and elsewhere is to maybe do away with those country limits and maybe do away or eliminate some of the quotas, at least for master's degree and above, for the green card holders, because they do connect to this problem of people not being able to get the H-1B, or if they get the H-1B, they're having to wait 6 to 10 years to be able to stay in the country and work on a permanent basis.
And another one of the problems with getting an H-1B visa is the caps, right?
Right. It's really been since the 1950s that someone's been able to come in on a temporary basis and work in what's called an H category. And then what happened is in 1990, Congress put a numerical cap or limit of 65,000 and changed some other rules. And then later on, that 65,000, there was an additional 20,000 added if you have a master's degree from a U.S. university. The problem has been for the past 5 or 6 years, and the reason this is in the news right now is that the cap has just not been big enough. We have an economy that's extremely large. We have about 154 million people in the labor force. The new H-1Bs each year come out to about 0.07% of the U.S. labor force, about less than 1/10 of 1%. And those have been basically used by employers very early in each fiscal year, and in fact before the start of the past 4 or 5 fiscal year. So what has had to happen is the Immigration Service has had to set an April 1st filing date. Employers file, and within a week they've generally used up all the quota. And what's happened is they've actually distributed the visas by lottery. Someone still has to be eligible to receive a visa, but literally they've went into what's called an H-1B visa lottery to distribute the visas, which is, of course, a very bizarre way of running immigration policy.
Now, do you have to have, you mentioned master's degree, do you have to have an advanced degree or a special kind of skill in order to qualify for one of these H-1Bs?
That's a good question. I mean, about 57% of the H-1B recipients do have a master's degree or higher, but the requirement is actually the equivalent of a bachelor's degree or higher. So you don't have to have a master's degree. On the other hand, you have to have a skill that's marketable enough that an employer would want to be willing to go through all this trouble to actually hire you.
Now, what kind of an impact do these visas have on the economy, and why is the administration looking at maybe tinkering with the regulations around this?
Well, I think employers certainly feel they have a very large impact on their ability to be able to produce work inside the United States. I think for large employers, they do have the option of hiring someone outside the United States, and for small employers, they generally don't have that option. But one of the things that people don't realize is when employers go on college campuses, they find that 50 to 75% of the graduate students in the key technology fields, electrical engineering, computer science, fields like that, are actually foreign nationals. So when they're recruiting Americans. I mean, the vast majority of employers have 90% or more Americans working for them. But they're also finding when they're going on these campuses to recruit that they would have to exclude 50 to 75% of the potential labor pool if they were to not look at possibly hiring foreign nationals from these campuses. And that really ends up being the crux of the issue.
We're talking with Stuart Anderson of the National Foundation for American Policy about the H1B visa policy. And the numbers are there on the screen, as well as we're being joined today by students from Susquehanna High School in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And that's where our first call comes from the C-SPAN Civic bus parked outside of Susquehanna High School. Our next call comes from Dominique Hunter. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, my name is Dominique. Keeping in mind that our country is experiencing everything, wouldn't the H1B culture continue this dramatic downfall? And would it increase unemployment and poverty in the country?
The question is whether having people come from other countries harms other countries? Is that the question?
Yes. Yes, like people coming from other countries, would it still increase unemployment and poverty in the U.S. today?
Okay. Well, I don't think that that's really the case. I think what we find in the research, and a lot of economists have found this, is that there's a lot of benefits of being open to highly skilled individuals. For example, there's been a lot of research showing that patents tend to increase with both H1B visa holders and international students. Our research and others have found that about 1 in 4 of technology companies that have been created in the United States, particularly publicly traded companies that had venture capital, were actually created by an immigrant. 1 in 4 had 1 or more immigrant founders. And we actually also found for international, for science competitions, there's something called the Intel Science Talent Competition. And a few years ago, we went and interviewed the finalists, and we found out that 2/3 of the finalists were actually the children of immigrants, and actually more of the finalists had parents who had come in on H1B visas than had parents born in the United States. So another benefit is that you combine the American talent with not only one generation of additional foreign talent, but actually the children of those talented people as well.
Our next call comes from Mountain View,